All right, um, a very good morning to everyone. I want to believe you can all hear me. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to believe you can hear me clearly. Please, if you can't, admin kindly indicate for me if I can be properly heard. Okay. My name is Engineer Emmanuel Grade. Uh, you are all welcome to the Nebosh class. Yes. Uh, S1 We'll be taking off immediately. We've already lost some time, and we don't want to waste much time on this. So quickly, I was talking about this. This is going to be an introductory class anyway. So we'll just do more like an overview um, or an introduction rather to the course. Okay. Um, this course is composed of so many parts, and it's like an all-encompassing or a complete study on health safety and environment as well as occupational health and safety, and it's more, it's a little advanced. It's more advanced than your HSC 1 to 3 kind of thing. So this is a different level of or indicator is a different level indicator of HSC profession. Okay, so typically we'll be looking at some familiar terms. As I said, familiarizing ourselves with these terminologies and some things that there are in this course. We'll be starting with the first element, which is the foundation. Basically, we'll be looking at about 5 different elements in the course of this course. In the process of taking this course, we'll be looking at 5 different elements. I believe you can see my screen clearly. And also, I want you to know that you also be having assignments on this course. Yes, we also be having some studies to go through on this course. All right. So, very quickly, I'll be looking at different definitions. Number one, we need to understand first and foremost what the what the nature of health and safety is all about. Okay, what the question comes to mind? Okay, what is health and safety all about? Basically, it's a multidisciplinary field. That's the first thing that we must know before we start talking about all these definitions. Please listen attentively. I said it's a multidisciplinary field. Yes. What do I mean by it being multidisciplinary? It means that it has a lot of different disciplines coming together or that are involved in health and safety. Okay. Now we have 4 basic areas. Let me just quickly mention that before I go further with this. We have 4 basic areas. Um, about 4 of them. We have the natural sciences that covers that's covered in the book. We have the natural sciences, we have the applied sciences, we have um, the social sciences, and we also have the formal sciences. Or yeah, the formal sciences. Now, I mentioned one. I said the natural sciences. When I'm talking about natural sciences, we're looking at the areas that cover biology, anatomy, physics, and chemistry. We all have that involved in health and safety as a multidisciplinary field. Okay. Then we also have the areas that talks about mathematics, computer science, computing, or statistics. Now, those mathematical area or computer area or statistical area, are the area that covers what now? The formal sciences. Then we'll have the social sciences too. And in the area of the social sciences, we have um, the aspect that talks about economics, finance, psychology, sociology. All these are all bounded, or they are all bounded within the confines of health and safety. Okay, so and it comes with different benefits or different areas. But first of all, let's start talking about some of the terminologies that that we'll be using in the course of this. One of them is your health, as it were. Before we talk about hazard and risk, okay? Talk about health. What's health in its own sense? What's health? Health alone is defined as the state of complete. It's not just the state of well-being, but the state of complete or total well-being. The state of what now? Complete or total well-being of an individual. Now, when we're talking about the complete or total well-being, what are we referring to? We are looking at what now? As it applies to the work, we're talking about the physical, the psychological, the 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 so psychosocial well-being of such individual as it applies to the person's work now, the person's job. Okay. Now the psychosocial well-being, the physical, the um, psychosocial, and the psychological well-being of such individual. That's what defines the health. Okay. Then we also then talk about some other definitions. What's an accident, for instance? What do we mean by what now? An accident. If we're saying an accident, what are we looking at? Any unwanted or undesirable event that can either lead to maybe harm or injury or damage. Understand that when we're talking about the harm to individual and to human or to a person, we're looking at what now? Injury or ill health. Okay, and sometimes in the worst case scenario, fatality, which is death. Okay, then when we're talking about harm to an asset, in safety we don't just say property, we call it what now, or equipment. We talk about what now? Asset. Asset talks about your every form of property or equipment that you can have in the workplace or as it regards such organization is what now defined as assets or is termed as what asset. Okay, so when there is a damage or when there is a harm to assets, then we'll be looking at what damage or what destruction. Okay, all right. So we have what now? Any unwanted or undesirable or unplanned event which could result in a loss of some kind. Now, this loss can be what now? Harm. And this harm is either as what now? Ill health or as what now? Injury or in some fatal and some more critical states as what? Fatality. That is death. Okay? And when it's got to do with assets, we'll talk about what damage or what destruction. Okay, that's what we mean by what accident. All right. Then we also look at something similar to it, which is what an incident or near miss. A near miss. What do we mean by a near miss? When we're talking about a near miss, we are talking about what now? An unwanted or unplanned event that has the potential to result in a loss, or that has the potential to cause what now? Harm. It has the potential. It hasn't caused harm yet, but it has the potential to cause harm. That is what a near miss. All right. What do I mean by that? Now, for instance, you you may be walking. Imagine if you are descending a staircase, a very long staircase. and you have your, I usually use this example, you have your hands occupied, your hand, you're holding something, you're also holding your phone, or you're making a phone call with your phone in one hand, and you have some items on the other hand. So you're not making use of the handrail. In such a case, you discover that while you are walking down such staircase, there's a tendency for you to walk now, trip and so or to trip to miss your step. So imagine when you miss your step there, but you're able to still gain your balance. Probably you're able to quickly lean on the handrail to gain your balance, or you're able to just get back on your feet quickly to gain your balance. Now, there was no injury, there was no sprain to your ankle. Maybe your books didn't fall, you were still able to hold them, your phone didn't fall, so nothing was damaged. But you just let go of such event without learning the lesson from it. Now, that is a near miss already. Why? Because there could have been a tendency, it had the potential, such event had the potential to cause harm. Event, not, so it's not a hazard now. We'll come to hazards now. Now, in this case, we're talking about an event that had the potential to cause what? Harm or loss. So that is a near miss. Okay? So you need to understand these definitions clearly. When it is an event that had the potential to cause harm, or a likely or a tendency to cause harm, or injury or losses, then we classify that as what a near miss. Now it's typical if you don't look at, if you have within 1 to 10 near misses that are not examined or investigated, then you are likely to have at least an accident in every 1 to 10 near misses. Yes. So what does that mean? If you don't check that, like this event that I just described, if you don't check it, if you don't put a check on that, or understand what were the procedures that this person ought to use, you see most times when you're passing or when you're in some buildings that are, or structures or facilities that are very safety conscious, on their staircases they always put a sticker or a label to tell you use the handrail. Why? Because they are trying to avoid what now? Such accident. Such person could have just tripped, missed the step. It could have been worse. He could have fallen down the staircase, damaged his phone, maybe break, have some bone breakage or dislocation, or even other forms of injury. What if this fall had hit the floor as he was falling down? Maybe because he had missed his step. That could have been more severe, you know, and that in some cases that could also lead to death. As trivial as that may seem, it could lead to a big loss that you may not be able to imagine. Okay, that's why we always say in safety that if you think if you think safety is expensive or difficult to comply with, then try the cost of what now? Accident. Now that will lead us to another area. We'll be talking about the cost that is involved in accident. I'll hold it here for now. Let's talk about some other things. We'll come back to this shortly. Okay. All right. Now, when we talk about the some other definitions too, we talk about an environment. We talk about safety in itself. Now, when we say safety, what are we talking about? Safety is the absence of any condition that can cause harm or damage or injury. Yes. Not everything that we're talking about that you might be seeing on your slide or um, on the screen. So please take note of them. So as I'm talking, some other things come to mind and I'll just have to pour them up quickly. So as I said earlier, it's more, so this class is more of a discussion and an overview of what we're talking, or sorry, an introduction to what we'll be discussing in subsequent classes. Okay. All right. So when we say safety, I said safety is the absence of what? Any condition that can cause harm, damage, or injury to people, environment, or even assets, okay, and reputation. Those four areas that I mentioned now are the areas that are usually considered that needs to be protected when we're talking about safety, which is what? The person, the personnel, the environment, the asset, and the reputation. Those four are very key. All right. Then we talk about the environment itself. Okay. What do we mean when we're talking about safety, health, and environment? Health, safety, and environment. We've defined health, we've defined safety, and we're talking about what now? Environment. An environment. We're looking at what now? The factors in the immediate surrounding. I take that again. I said it's what now? The factors in the immediate surrounding that can be influenced by the work activity. Yes, those factors in the immediate surrounding that can be influenced by tasks or work activities. You understand? Those are what we, or that's what we describe as what now? The environment, the immediate surrounding, the factors present in the immediate surrounding that can be influenced by what now? The work activity. All right. Now, it can also be um, it can be large, it can be a larger surrounding. Okay, that can be so it's not subject to time per se. It can be small, it can the sizes of the environment can vary from location to location and task to task, from different tasks to different tasks. Okay, so this things can actually work now vary. So and when we are working in our environment, we are always surrounded by some factors that have the potential to cause what now? Harm. They have the potential to cause harm. Now, remember what I said about near me. I said events that what now have the potential, an unwanted or unplanned event that has potential to cause harm or loss is what we define as what near miss. But when we now look at other factors that are present, physical factors present, it could be an entity, it could be something that has the potential now, not an event, but something, a substance that has what now? The potential, a substance that has the potential, a substance or condition that has what now? The potential to cause harm. And you already know what I mean by harm. It is defined as what now? Hazard. Then, when we talk about risk, we are looking at what now? The likelihood that harm will occur and the severity of that harm. That's what we mean by what? Risk. So we can say risk is also the probability or the likelihood that a hazard will cause harm in relation to the effect or the consequence. Let me take that again for those of you that are jotting. I said it is what now? What did I describe it as? I said the probability or likelihood. That's talking about risk now. The probability or likelihood that the hazard that we talked about, that a hazard will cause what now? Harm. And then we look at it relative to the effect or consequence or severity of such what now? Exposure to the hazard. Okay. So in a very brief form, we say yes, the likelihood that harm will occur and the severity of the harm. But in a more elaborate definition, you describe it as the probability of likelihood that what now? A hazard will cause harm in relation to or relative to what now? The severity or consequence of such exposure to the what now? To the hazard. Now, what are we talking about? In a very straight form, hazard is hazard is an existing risk. That's what we just mean in summary. Hazard is an existing risk. What do I mean? Look at this. Look at a practical example. If, for instance, you are on a tiled floor, maybe where you are right now, the floors are all tiled. Okay, that you're having tiles on the floor, and you know that those tiles could become slippery, more slippery when you have oil spilled on them. All right. The moment you have oil spilled on that floor, that oil on the floor is already a hazard. All right. Then, but when we are just talking about eventually, it's not yet in existence, but we are looking at the likelihood that it could cause harm. That is what now? The risk. That's more like a risk analysis. You are taking in that, okay, oh, if you have this like this, if this should be this way, then this will happen. That's a probability. That's a probabilistic assumption or situation. Okay, so we are looking at the probability of something happening. It's different from when it is already in existence. All right. So when that hazard is already in existence, it becomes when that substance is already in existence, it becomes a hazard. I think that is very well understood. So we have a couple of other definitions doing which you should also go and study as part of your assignment. Dangerous occurrence, um, um, risk assessment. What do I mean by I just explained what risk assessment is. We'll have others to talk about. All right. Then we talk about the reasons or the reasons why we manage health and safety. Why should health and safety be managed? Why? Why should health and safety be managed? There are three basic reasons, three major reasons. Number one is the moral reason. Number two is the legal reason. And number three is what now? The financial or economical reason. Number one is what? The moral reason. Number two is the legal reason, legal or social reason. Then number three is what now? The financial or um, economic what now? Reason. The financial or economic reason. Now, when we're talking about the financial or economic reason, what are we looking at in this case? Let's take the moral reasons first of all. Now, for the moral reason, you know, in general, let's in general, this what you have here on the screen is a summary. But if you want to take them individually, now, for the moral reason alone, what do we mean there? You know that accidents can be very, very painful or can also, apart from causing pain, it can also cause a lot of costs. Okay, so we said that accidents or injuries or ill health, they can be very painful and they can be cost intensive also. So to prevent this, what do we do? You must ensure that you maintain what we call the DOC, DOC, which is what? Duty of care. Okay, the DOC, which is, and what do I mean by DOC? Talking about what? The duty of care. What do we mean by duty of care? Duty of care is the moral responsibility that you have to carry out your task in a way that it does not negatively affect others that are around or that are directly or indirectly connected or associated with such tasks. What do I mean? Let's say you have to carry out uh, probably something that is going to bring about dust, raising dust around the area. Okay, let me even use a very casual example, like sweeping a place that is dusty or dusting a room, sweeping a dusty environment. Now, your duty of care, when you try to wet the floor, first of all, a little before you start sweeping, you're already exercising a duty of care, both for yourself and for those around. But what are you doing? You are trying to ensure that by the time you start sweeping, the dust will not spread everywhere and people will have to start inhaling. All right. So that is an exercise, that's an attempt to exercise what we call the duty of care. You understand? So that they don't start having what? Nasal issues or respiratory or breathing issues as a result of what? The dust that will be emanating from the housekeeping that you are doing. Housekeeping, that's cleaning activities or tidying up the environment. Okay, that is an example. That's just a very particular example of that. Okay, so that's it. That's understanding the moral reason and the duty of care. Then also we have a legal reason. Now, this is a very critical part also. Most times when accidents occur in or when there is any hazard, anything that leads to harm or injury in an organization, sometimes you discover that based on different level of severity of such incidences, there could be legal actions taken up. Yes, there could be legal actions taken up. I've been in a community. I've worked in a community before where uh, the the main company, the oil company in that community, has an accident, a fire accident that led to environmental pollution everywhere. So the air was really seriously polluted within that area because of the soot that was coming from the combustion of crude oil as a result of the explosion or the fire that, that the inferno that occurred. All right. So what happened? The community sued the the company for a long time, for a couple of for a couple of weeks with protest, massive protest, and they took legal actions against them. Now that was also different from the extra expenses, the cost that was coming in from contractors that could not access their project sites. You understand what I mean? That kind of cost is called variation. They were already working in that site, and this fire incident happened. So it prevented them from continuing their project, even though they were working for that company or other companies associated with that the main oil company. They started putting in different costs of the losses they were incurring for the periods they could not access their jobs there. Now, those were legal costs or legal issues that were already coming up, because they have to start settling these issues, legal or social issues, social with the community, legal with the contractors that they have with them, because that's not a force majeure. That is not just an act of God. It's as a result of an accident due to their complacency or their negligence. All right. Now, I've used some terms there: negligence or complacency. What are these terms? You still need to also find out in the course of your um, program. Okay. Now, what do I mean? This costs started coming in. Contractors started filing in different variation costs that this is what is costing them for the period that they cannot work. Why? Because they have their equipment down there. Those equipment are on higher basis per day. Most of them, in fact, almost all of them, run into hundreds of thousands per day. And imagine not being able to work, even if it's 1 week. That means you count the losses that you are already making for that day. Then they have their workforce also. The workforce, the team that's working with them, that they mobilize. Whether you work or you don't work, as whether you go to site or you don't go to site, you have cost reading already per day on each person for their accommodation, for their feeding, and their daily pay. So putting all these things together, it's already a legal action or a legal dispute that they will start having with such organization. Now, when they saw the cost, what happened? They were forced at the point to open some section of the country, of the location, to those contractors to start to continue their works because the bills were already mounting up. The same thing happens when somebody happens to die in the course of duty. The family can take a legal action against such company. So what's the as an employer, what's expected of you? You're expected to ensure that what now the job or the task you are carrying Okay, are we together? I hope you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. Okay, I believe you can hear me clearly. So I can see here my audio is back. So as I was saying, I said the employer are to provide what now? The employers are to provide a safe place of work and a safe access and egress. Okay, now safe system of work. You should have safe systems in place that ensure that what now activities are carried out within the the safety regulations that bound such operations. Okay. Now, information, instruction, trainings, and supervision should be provided also for the employers. Yes. Then you also provide what now? Safe and competent fellow workers. So you ensure that your workers are safe. How? You provide PPEs for them at no cost. Those are some of the recommendations of the Safety Act also. Provide PPE for them at no cost. And then ensure that they are trained and the people you are carrying using to execute your task or that make up your workforce are competent work now persons. Now, when we talk about the losses that are associated with activities, it should be noted that these losses can be in various forms. All right, we have the cost of accident that can be direct or indirect. Then it could also be what now? Insured or uninsured. And you could also have what we call the employer's liability insurance. Okay. So employer's liability what now? Insurance. I'll show us something quickly that describes this part. Good. So look at it. When we're talking about direct and indirect costs, when we're talking about direct and indirect costs or insured and uninsured costs. Now, let me first, before I explain this insured and uninsured costs, let me first explain the direct and indirect costs also. All right. Now, when we're talking about the direct and indirect costs, when we say direct costs, we're looking at the costs as a direct effect. Okay, the cost as a what now? The cost that is incurred and it has a direct effect of such what now? Incident or event. So, for example, let's look at as when we're talking about that direct cost now. An example is medical bills, for instance. Yes, look at medical bills. Look at first aid. You know, look at the cost of repairing equipment if there's an accident and you have to repair your equipment as a result of the accident, or you have to incur medical bills to for treatment of the people involved or the personnel involved, or even the first aid itself, you have to make use of some items for first aid, or sometimes you have to even compensate. In some cases, you hear families of people who maybe died in the course of their work. I remember in 2015, December, around December 2015, November, December 2015, where at a particular job project, that was a particular task. That job was just to last about 5 days. It was a clamping project, and was about 5 or 4 days. No, okay, about a week. So just a short time stop. Something they will just do sharp, sharp, as we say, and it will be done. But within on the last day of that particular task, you discover these people that were carrying out the job were professionals, seasoned professionals, but just a little complacency of one of them, where they forgot to properly isolate a line where gas was coming from. The valve was not properly shut, completely shut out. So what happened? Gas had The trapped gas somewhere else had already migrated to another area where they were working, to a region where they were working. So they went on break, came back, and before they commenced the job, they were supposed to have carried out a gas testing around that area to detect if there was any gas leakage. But because they felt out there was nothing like that before they went on break, nobody has tampered with that place, probably, or for whatever complacency or whatever reasons. They are so rest in peace anyway. But what happened? The moment they got into the location back, four hefty family men swarmed within a space of 4 minutes, less than 4 minutes. They were already dead. That was a fatal case. That was catastrophic catastrophe. 4 of them. Now, what will happen? The company will have to bear some of the losses too of compensation to those families. Imagine the lives that are dependent on these people. Imagine the cost that the company is going to incur in trying to compensate the families of these people. Imagine the hopes that may also be lost as a result of the loss of life of these people because of those who depend on them, the hopes of those who depend on them that would already be shattered or lost as a result of that accident. Just imagine the consequence of all this. These are some of the things, the costs that that organizations or companies may face when safety is not properly handled. Now, some of these costs can be insured or uninsured. When we talk about insured costs, we are looking at the costs that, for instance, there is already a covering for, there is already a plan for it in case it occurs. You understand? Some of us, for our vehicles or our cars, we carry out comprehensive insurance. But many of us do third-party insurance for our cars. So what happens is that when there's an accident, you have to bear most of the cost because the third-party insurance is not easily accessible in the system that we have in Nigeria. Okay, but if it's a comprehensive insurance, then maybe your insurance company can take care of the costs involved in such accidents or for the repair of such vehicles. That is what an example of insured cost. Okay, that's a very good example of insured cost. So some other ones are injuries and ill health or damage. Yes, those ones could be insured. But the truth, in practical sense, like you can see on the screen right now, it's just like an iceberg. Okay, when you talk about the accident iceberg, the accident iceberg is what we use in describing the insured and uninsured, the costs that have to do with accidents. The fact is that among all these direct and indirect costs, the ones that are insured are very little compared. The ones that can be insured rather are very little compared to the numbers or the number of accidents or the type of accidents that are not insured. So it is like an iceberg. When you're in the sea and you see an iceberg, what you are seeing above the water is a fraction of what is beneath the water, like what you can see right now. An iceberg is like a mountain that has come up from the base of the river, of the ocean, and out of the water surface. Okay, so it's just a tip. That's where we get the word from. A tip of the iceberg. When you hear the word a tip of the iceberg, yes, that is an illustration of um, uninsured and insured costs. What we see that can be insured, what can be insured among the direct and indirect costs are just a tip of the iceberg, as you can see on this screen right now. I believe you can all see my screen. So look at them. For instance, injury or ill health and damage. Okay, all these ones can be insured costs. Yes, you can have an insurance, health insurance covers all these ones, right? Yes, but when we are now looking at some other costs, including some indirect costs too, you know, if we are talking, first of all, if we are talking about indirect costs, An example of indirect cost is, for instance, the time that you spend in interviewing maybe or training new replacement. You can't you can't measure such cost, for instance. It's an indirect cost. You can't easily assess it or measure it. Okay. Now you look at another example like maybe the loss of goodwill of your customers or reputation. If, for instance, the moment trust is a thing, it's something that you can. It takes a long time to build, but the moment it is damaged, it takes far long. Most times, some people say it cannot be rebuilt. That's how. That's an example of an indirect cost. You cannot quantify it monetarily. You cannot quantify it monetarily, but you can see the effect. The moment you lose goodwill of your customers or your clients, then your business will
This time
begin
of
to
this,
dwindle.
another
All
class is
right.
beginning.
So thank you very much for your time. So we are going just take these few. You can take a snapshot of this. Some other assignments will be sent to you, will be given to you in the course of our of other classes. All right. But for today, let's make use of this assignment. Take a snapshot and um, also ensure that you give them a try, attempt them completely. Take a snapshot of the assignment here. Some other um, form of assignment will be given to you. A link will be sent to you where you'll be able to do your assignment that will be scored also. Okay, so practice this first. Get familiar with this in preparation for your second assignment.